It's the same good stuff as always. $10 a tube. You know the deal.
I don't got that type of money.
Well, if that's the case, just got this stuff in from China. Who knows what they cut it with, but for $2 a tube, it's yours. Go ahead, try it out.
Marie's oil paint. What the hell even is this stuff? I'm in deep enough. Might as well have a go.
早上好，中国！现在我有冰淇淋，我很喜欢冰淇淋，但是速度与激情就比冰淇淋速度与激情就我最喜欢，所以现在是因为时间，准备。
What more is there to say? I bought a bunch of art supplies off Temu.com. Last video we tested out the drawing supplies, but this week I have the paints that I bought. These were $2.25 a piece from the Chinese brand Marie's, and I was impressed with their drawing supplies. So let's torture me and paint something good with this, or at least try to. I'm not sure that they're gonna be able to do that. I haven't even taken them out of the tube yet, and I only got 4 different paints. 2 of them are black and white. The others are cadmium red and yellow ochre. This is actually all we're gonna need to paint a great portrait. It's called the Zorn palette. It refers to this guy named Anders Zorn in the late 19th century, but it goes much further back than that. But my biggest pet peeve is seeing all these people online talk about these fancy color palettes, all of this complicated stuff like the CMYK palette, or these aren't your true primaries or whatever. But here's the thing. Limitation is the mother of creativity, and there's no better way to improve your portrait paintings than limiting your palette so that you can focus on what's most important. And people are mud colored. With me, yeah, a bit paler on the spectrum of mud, but it doesn't take a complicated palette in order to paint people. But we'll get into all of that stuff later. I think we just need to take these out of the tube and see if they're even workable. All right, here we are head to head. We got the Marie's oil paints right over here and my normal Winsor & Newton oil paints right over here. This is titanium white, cadmium red. It's cadmium red hue, but basically the same thing. So is this yellow ochre and ivory black. And then on the Marie's side, we got our titanium white, cadmium red, yellow ochre, but this time it's lamp black, which I totally forgot that lamp black was gonna be the only choice I had here. I've had one experience with this stuff and it was horrible. I used it once and I just never used it again. I think I still have the tube somewhere in my box, so we'll get to that later. But I think the best way to test these out is just to mix some colors. I got some just paint swabs from like Home Depot here, and let's just give it a try. First, we're gonna need to get to this very pale reddish color. I'm gonna put a little bit of yellow in there because it's not like pure pink. And we'll see how these paints perform. Just taking them out of the tube, they weren't super thin and oily and running all over. I've had cheap paints before that they just come out of the tube like pure oil. And they weren't like that. They actually felt pretty good. So I'm pleasantly surprised already. And they feel similar in thickness. I think these ones maybe felt a little bit thicker coming out of the tube. We'll see. All right, we're kind of in the realm with the color, but we're gonna need a lot whiter. So let's just put a good amount of white into there. And I think this is getting pretty close. Let me think here. It's pretty darn close. I think it's gonna be a little bit dark, a little bit too red. Yeah, I think I'm on with both of those. I'm gonna put more white into there and a little bit of yellow. If we need to hit a high saturation yellow, bright yellow color, this palette can't do it. That's the weaknesses of the palette. They can only go darker and less saturated than our base components here. So anytime we mix, we're gonna lose a little bit of that. So we can never make something go brighter than what it came from. And that's okay for skin tones because they're really, like I said, pretty mud colored, pretty in the middle. But every time I get the value right, I can't hit the saturation. And we might just be limited in our palette here. We might not have enough range in our base colors here. I'll try a little bit more and then I'll swap over to the Winsor & Newton and see if they can do it. I'll take a little bit of a smarter approach now that I've already done it once. I already kind of figured out the formula. At least I think. Maybe a little bit more yellow in there. And if you're new to painting, it's all about just pulling off these little bits of colors at the edge of your pile. You don't ever want to just dig into it most of the time. at least for those subtle colors. But you also shouldn't be afraid about how much paint you're using too. Pretty close. I think we're a little bit dark, a little bit more red. Kind of hitting that same area there where we got pretty much everything right, but it's a little bit gray. Yeah, so I think this one is just out of the reach of our palette. I mean, we got like 99% of the way there with both colors, so I think that's totally fine. All right, here we got a nice dark, rich skin tone. So this has got a good amount of saturation in it still. It's got that nice reddish brown in there. Let's grab a bunch of yellow, maybe not a bunch, but a good amount of yellow. That's gonna be our base tone, and we'll mix it with red to get a nice orange in there. And now on this one, we're gonna have to use that black, and that's what I'm scared of, because the last time I used lamp black, I bought it instead of ivory black. I was like, what's the difference? It's just black. How different really could it be? And oh my god, it was different. Hitting a nice level of saturation with these paints, by the way. They look good, they feel good, they feel very similar to Winsor & Newton's. I think they're a little bit more oily. But anyways, the last time I bought lamp black instead of ivory black, it just killed the saturation of every single color that it touched. It was so strong, it had a very high tinting strength, so that just means anything that it touches, it takes over really quickly. You know, we're close to that value, but we still need to desaturate it anyway. So I'm gonna use a very small amount of lamp black, and let's just see what it does to this color. Just takes right over. Not bad though, because I used such a small amount. I think I'm a smarter man now. I'm more reasonable. And we're already kind of close. It does need to get grayed out a lot though, so I'll add a little bit of white. We'll add a little bit more black in there. Oh yeah, look at all the desaturation just gone. Let's check it. Okay. I think we need to be slightly lighter, slightly grayer, and slightly redder. So let's do those things. Slightly lighter, slightly grayer. That's too much. There we go. And slightly more red, I said. There are my components in there. Hopefully, I look at how black that just got instantly because of that lamp black. I would never ever buy this stuff for mixing portraits. I mean, ivory black is cheap and easy to use. I mean, no reason not to. I'm gonna have to add more red and more white to compensate here. And that's what I mean, the second you add too much, it's gone. That looks pretty darn close right there. I think we're getting there. Ooh, not bad. You guys are seeing a slight glare on these, so it doesn't appear to be the exact same value. Yeah, and there you can see I'm a little bit too light, but I think the hue looks really good. The color looks really good. So we just need to bring it down in value a little bit. I think that right there is it. That looks pretty darn good. Let's see if we struggle any less with the Winsor & Newton. I don't mind taking black right off the rip here. A little bit of red in there. Should be, I think we're gonna be 99% on here. Yeah, and that was like 2 tries. A little bit of black. Yep, and I think we are there pretty much perfectly on that one. Just so you guys can see a little bit better. Very, very, very close. 99% of the way there. Honestly, Marie's feels, mixing it, the viscosity of it, the thickness of it, very close. This was a little bit more oily, but it's not that bad. The only problem here is just the different pigment of the black, and that's not really the paint's fault. I mean, it's their fault for not offering ivory black, but overall, this is about 80-85% of the way to this, and it's a quarter of the price. Now, a lot of people will make the argument that if you want to learn to mix color, you need to get high quality pigment. That way, you're actually mixing what you think you're mixing, right? It makes it easier, and I would probably agree with that. So I still don't know if I think this is really a good deal or not. I think oil painting is just expensive, and you have to accept that fact, but it's okay to save a few bucks every once in a while, but let's move on. There is an intense source of irony that we're going to be starting this painting out with, because at the art store, when I went to grab some acrylic just so I wanted to start painting today, I realized that they had these nice panels on sale for a good price, and I've never really painted on a panel like this before, so I wanted to try it out. And I have sanded this down 3 times. I prepared this in a very nice soft way, which will work for our reference photo very nicely. But the extreme irony of this is probably one of the nicest surfaces I've ever painted on. Normally I just paint on paper or whatever. To be paired with the Marie's $2 oil paint, I understand how ridiculous that is. And I don't know how I feel about it either, but nonetheless, that's okay. Here, I've chosen a photo by Jules Joseph Lefebvre, one of the greatest painters of skin of all time. This incredible level of form and fleshiness, his 3-dimensionality while maintaining a beautiful softness. And you'll probably have seen some of his paintings of beautiful naked women. That's what he did best. And, well, we can all look up to Jules Joseph Lefebvre because he looked like this and he made an entire career out of looking at beautiful naked women, so kind of the Riz God, if you will. I found the middle of my canvas and I'm just searching for the longest lines here with my vine charcoal, and I just want to place this on the canvas in a nice orderly way that makes sense. I don't want to just slap it down anywhere and then realize that it's horribly composed. When we paint, painting is all about the hierarchy of ideas. And what that means is we have to work our way down from the most important thing to the least important thing. At the top of that hierarchy, or at the base of it, the most fundamental part of it, that is the abstract, the composition. Does this shape look good inside of this 4 walls? That's why I won't immediately swear off all abstract art, even though it's not really my thing. If the design's good, the design's good. If it looks fun, you know, everyone likes some level of decorative art. Certainly, decorative floral designs, decorative motifs have been around forever. That's abstract, but they appeal to the laws of design. Those laws of design, by the way, I don't know what they are, but we uncover them through painting. Painting is the search for truth. That's why it's not about copying, even though we're working on a copy right now. It's about uncovering what we see. We're learning and uncovering what's beneath the surface. This is why I got a good panel. Here is the midpoint of the canvas. And here's the center line of the head. I made a mistake. The center line of the head should be in, I need to stop hitting that, should be in the midpoint. It's not, you know, so try again. That's why I got a nice, if it was just a cheap canvas or whatever, then I would have just said whatever. But I want this to be nice. So try again. All right, it only took a few minutes, 5 or 10 minutes to get it back into position because I already had a lot of the measurements right and I already knew where I wanted it on the canvas. But this is stronger in every way. It's simpler, it's more convincing, the shapes are better, the proportions are better, and it's composed better. You gotta just take the time, and if you get it wrong, it's okay. The second time you do it, it's gonna be better and faster. Okay, I did about 2 hours on this drawing or so. I just sprayed some spray fixative on here. It's the same process they would have used back in the day. And then we're gonna do a underpainting. A lot of the late 19th century painters went right in with color and kind of skipped the whole underpainting process. It really depends on the painter that you're looking at. People like Lefebvre with these really highly finished paintings, very subtle. Transitions, I think that they would have used a lot more of the underpainting process. So generally I would use burnt umber here. I don't have burnt umber. I have, and I have my paint cam now. I have yellow ochre and some red and some black. We can kind of just make our own burnt umbers. Burnt umber is just the color of dirt. So we really don't have to be super specific about it. It's just reddish dirt. I know every painting of this generation looks incredibly delicate and soft, but when you actually get up close to them, you realize just how thick they were painted in most cases. It's not what you think, and this one is exceptionally refined, but that's just because Lefebvre is Lefebvre. If you actually look, even at like a Bouguereau, there's a lot of highly direct painting. Actually, most of Bouguereau is highly direct painting. It's not glazing. Glazing was not actually a really common technique for these 19th century academic painters. I mean, it's a tool that they used, but 90–80% of their work was done just purely with bristle brushes and good old-fashioned hard work. Wet into wet. We kind of have this idea that alla prima is this thing that was invented after we rejected the glazing practices or something like that. I don't know, maybe that's a caricature, but really people have been working this way. It's just the most efficient and effective way to work. Why would you glaze something that you can just paint directly in a quarter of the time? Glazing is for making adjustments. It's for doing certain things like fabric or backgrounds. Glazing can be really helpful for that, especially backgrounds. Fabric can be painted quite directly as well. But in the flesh tones, Bouguereau is noted to really rarely glaze in the flesh tones, and also to use bristle brushes, not incredibly soft brushes. This is probably a softer brush than he would have used as a synthetic brush. All right, it is day 2, or I guess technically 3. I spent probably 3 hours prepping and doing the drawing on the panel on the first day. Second day, I spent, I think, about 4 hours of like paint on canvas time. Now I'm going to begin modeling the flesh tones, and I just want to think out loud for a little bit about what the flesh tones are in 19th century paintings. And I think a lot of people have the wrong idea, the wrong mindset behind these concepts. Because during the 19th century, it's not just about copying. People kind of get into this idea like these really realistic paintings are just made by copying, spending 500 hours on a painting, glazing, working it up in layers. But this couldn't be further from the truth when you look at especially the late 19th century. They didn't really glaze all that often, certainly not artists like Sargent. I mean, he's a very direct painter, but really most of the academics of the time, they used glazing as a tool, like many other tools that they have, but 90% of their work is done through direct painting. And I encourage you to just zoom in on paintings, and you'll find all these little things you hear about paint, like all these little tips or ideas, like you have to paint thick and then thin on top, or thin and then thick on top. I don't know. I don't know any of these rules, or that your shadows have to be thin and then your lights have to be thick. Just zoom in on some paintings. You'll see them. These rules are all constantly broken all the time. So learn from the masters. Don't learn from me. Don't trust me. Don't trust anyone. Follow the sources. Zoom in on the paintings and challenge these ideas yourself. And when it comes to light and modeling the flesh in 19th century paintings, the ideas you'd be thinking about is unity. That's what I like to call it. There's many ways that this is described. The French often call this the ensemble, which means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You know, drawing and painting is made up of all these little tiny pieces. There's values and edges and the drawing and form and proportion. And if you put all of your energy into any one of these, the rest is going to fall away. Because you have to not only be highly technically invested in these, but you have to manage stringing them all together in a beautiful, coherent way. That's what the ensemble is. It's all the instruments playing together. Nobody gets a crazy solo in the orchestra. No, they all come together to make something greater than they are as pieces themselves. When we look at 19th century painting, it's not about copying, especially when it comes to like the modeling of the portrait. When I say modeling, I'm meaning like how the flesh feels fleshy, how it pushes and pulls in. These painters work like they're working on a ball of clay. And Sargent, I'm reading a lot about him right now because it's interesting. I might do a video on him, but Sargent thought like a sculptor. He shaped the whole mass of the head first and then started carving planes into it and then started carving these details in it. He wasn't focused on the eyeballs first. That would be prioritizing a part over the whole. The whole is the entire head, the mass of it. And when it comes to unity in this Lefebvre painting, I think that we have to look at our values, how our skin tones are split up. And what you'll see is in the lights stay very bright. The midtones turn very quickly into these dark edges around the head. This is a very common lighting setup in the 19th century. You're not going to see like the half and half lighting that you see nowadays. You're going to see more often this general light over the whole face, and then a little bit of shadow, a little bit of darkness at the side, because they don't need that super strong contrast in order to create form. They're so good that they're able to model and make this painting feel realer than life with just the light. And that's something that it's hard to find nowadays. I really think it is. So going into this painting, I want to keep things really simple. I think I want to spend more time mixing my colors and probably, I don't like to say pre-mixing because it's not like I'm using some set palette or something. I mean, I'm using the Zorn palette, but it's not like I have, oh, this is my skin tone color, I mix it every time. I've seen other people pre-mix and fill tubes of their skin color, but that's ridiculous. You should always observe and look and change to the lighting situations. But I want to mix up a good pile of these values that I see first, these colors that I see first. That way I am putting the color on nice and thick and bold and directly. That's how it should be done. When you use too little paint, it doesn't flow nicely, and you're going to have a harder time getting these nice edges, a softness, this variety. You actually need to use more paint to paint more technical, I suppose. So it's a little bit contrary. The way that we look at people, the way that we perceive the world. If I'm driving down the road, well, most of the time I drive, I'm like, what the hell just happened the past 30 minutes? Did I run a red light? Did I almost get in an accident? Because my brain's just on autopilot. That's how we live the world. If I was perceiving every leaf on every tree as I walked around, I would be exhausted after like a 5-minute walk, just because it's too much energy. So our brain fills in all those gaps around us. But when we paint, we have to slow down and observe one thing or a group of things and see how they relate to each other, see how they look in the abstract and in the detailed. And that's a really beautiful thing. We don't really get a lot of time to just sit down and think and observe about things in our daily life. And that's why painting is so fulfilling and meaningful. Overall, the way that we have to paint is backwards from the way that we have to look. When we look at something, we see the details first. We see the eyes, we see the areas of high contrast on the face. When we paint, we need to see the framework, the thing that builds it, the big masses first, like a sculptor carving this big chunk of marble into a head-shaped form, a simplified form, and then carving those big planes out. You can get a perfect likeness with no features. And that's a really crazy thing to say to a non-painter, because you're entirely restructuring the way that you think. And that's the beauty behind drawing and painting, especially in this older way. It's all about understanding what you see, not just copying it. Okay, we're finishing this today. I made considerable progress yesterday. All the skin tones are wet, but anything with the black in it significantly is dry, actually, funny enough. Otherwise, I think we've done pretty well. Everything is generally established. I just need to go piece by piece for each part. And I'm going to start using these softer brushes, these kind of synthetic mongoose brushes, synthetic sable brushes that I have here. That's going to allow me to actually get this softness, especially on the panel here, which doesn't have any texture. It's very smooth. These bristle brushes just dig right in. This is where I'm going to have to either let it dry and then go on top, which I don't want to do. I don't want to spend 2 weeks on this. So I'm going to use these softer brushes to really fill in these gaps with paint and work on the edges between certain things. Am I going to be able to hit the levels of refinement that Lefebvre hit on this painting? No, I don't have enough time. I'm not exactly at Lefebvre's level of mastery yet. I'm not sure I fully understand exactly how he got there. I think that this is extremely similar to what those first layers would have looked like. But there's going to be a stage where they let it dry, they sand it down, they rework. Maybe they're doing some glazing. Probably to hit this level of refinement, you're going to want to do some glazing in order to get that softness. That is a time where I do think these guys would have gone for that. With Lefebvre, it's not so much about pure efficiency. At least in a painting like this, it's not so much about hitting the maximum level of efficiency that you can accomplish, giant multi-figure paintings. You know, this is absolutely a portrait about refinement. I had Gamblin in my DMs. I had Michael Harding in my DMs. Everyone said, they can't do it, Jake. You can't do it. Put down the Chinese oil paints. China is not good enough. I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it anyways. And we did it. Guys, don't run off and buy the things that I buy just because I make them look good. The point of the video isn't that this oil paint is the secret in order to better painting. I think it's okay stuff. The white is not the highest tinting strength. The lamp black sucks. The red wasn't very vibrant. It was just okay. It wasn't super oily, but the point here is that you should learn the fundamentals. Learn what's most important, and materials are at the very top of the pyramid. You just need medium quality materials in order to get the job done. And if you understand what's most important, then you're gonna get a lot further than somebody who focuses so much on hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of materials. But this has raised the question for me. I've never used good oil paint. I just realized this, I've never used expensive oil paint, so maybe if you guys want to see a cheap versus expensive oil paint, we can make a little bit of an investment for the channel. If you guys want to hear that, make sure you comment down below and like and subscribe and all that good stuff, because that's going to be really expensive and I don't make any money off of this channel. So thanks for watching the video. Let me know what you think down below, and I will see you hopefully next week.